We're out in the soybean field today. It's approaching maturity. One of the things that we're seeing in this field is sudden death syndrome. Now, sudden death syndrome is a soil-borne fungal disease that once it's in a field, it will always be there. For the most part, when we're looking for sudden death syndrome, we'll see it much earlier than this. Because this is a fungal disease, it's going to be really aggregated in the field because it's soil associated. So we can look in those individual pockets in the field. Going into those, we'll see scattered plants affected. When we see those plants that are affected, we may have healthy plants, then plants more severely affected. Most of the time, it's going to work out in a radial pattern away from a center point. And when we're looking at those individual plants that are affected, at that level, we're going to first see symptoms, much earlier in the growing season. Just like our other stem and root rots, we're going to see sudden death syndrome showing up when we get into that peak water use time in that mid-pod fill stage. So when we get into that R5 growth stage, that's a lot of times when we see sudden death syndrome showing up. And we see it showing up in those leaves in the upper portion of the canopy first. We're going to see those leaves with chlorotic blotches between the veins in those upper leaves. And eventually those blotches are going to become necrotic. They're going to get brown and die out. The veins are going to stay green. And fairly rapidly, this is going to progress where we see leaves with green veins. And then eventually those leaves are going to drop. And we're going to see those stems, the petioles, the leaf stem that's going to remain attached. And so even at this stage, when we go into that soybean field and we're looking for, what's causing these patches to die, we can identify sudden death syndrome by trying to find some leaves that we see those symptoms on. We can see plants with those petioles attached. And then the other big thing that we always want to do is go in and split those stems. So we take those individual plants out, split those stems, and the big disease that we're trying to differentiate here is brown stem rot from sudden death syndrome. With sudden death syndrome, the inside of that stem, the center is going to be a whiter color or light green. But the outside edges of the stem, not visible from the outside of the plant, but just inside that epidermal layer, we're going to see some brown and dark streaks in that stem area. And that can go up several feet into the canopy even. So one other problem that we see in soybean that can be associated, or we see commonly with fields that have sudden death syndrome, is soybean cyst nematode. And there has been a lot of research to show that fields that have soybean cyst nematode will have more severe SDS because we'll see some feeding with that nematode and then we'll get infection from the SDS pathogen. So again, when we're looking for sudden death syndrome and we're trying to identify it, the key thing, we're looking at a disease that's aggregated in the field, plant-to-plant variation. Look for those leaves that have blotches on them, necrotic areas, chlorotic spots, that changes rapidly. So then we get those leaves with green veins. We see leaf drop. The other thing we'll see is those plants will pull real easily, and those root systems on those plants that are affected by SDS are going to have the taproot typically rotted away. So if you see those symptoms in your field, you're going to want to correctly identify this so you can take the right management steps to improve your profits for soybean production.